The Poseidon's Delight promised a luxurious maiden voyage, an invitation to explore the seas on a themed ship that recreated the golden age of piracy. For Mystery Incorporated, it seemed like the perfect opportunity for a well-deserved vacation. Little did they know that, in the salty depths, something ancient was awakening. The legend of the cursed Black Pearl had always been whispered, but when a spectral ship emerged from the mists, with tattered sails and a crew of shadows, luxury gave way to terror. Was it just an elaborate prank to liven up the cruise, or had the line between folklore and reality blurred, bringing forth a curse that no nautical map could predict? The invitation to the inaugural cruise of the Poseidon's Delight arrived in an envelope sealed with a pirate's crest. Fred, always skeptical, viewed the proposal as a mere publicity stunt. A pirate-themed ship? Why not a unicorn one, while we're at it, he quipped. Velma, on the other hand, had already researched the company, Oceanus Cruises, and discovered they had an impeccable record of luxury cruises, though the pirate theme was new. Daphne, excited by the prospect of a relaxing vacation, began planning her outfits. Scooby and Shaggy, of course, were more interested in the all-you-can-eat buffet the brochure promised. Arrival at the port was as grand as the ship itself. The Poseidon's Delight was a floating fortress, with imposing masts, decorative cannons, and a crew dressed in character, greeting guests with "Ahoy!" The interior was even more impressive. Opulent lounges, restaurants named after lost treasures, and cabins that looked more like royal suites. Mystery Incorporated was greeted by Captain Bartholomew Barty Blackwood, a burly man with a patched eye and a booming laugh, who fit the role of a pirate captain perfectly. He explained that the cruise would simulate a treasure hunt, with games and reenactments to entertain the passengers. The first night was a party, with music, dancing, and, to Scooby and Shaggy's delight, an endless supply of snacks. However, as the ship pulled away from the coast, a dense fog began to roll in, enveloping the Poseidon's Delight in a mysterious shroud. Fred, who was on the bow watching the horizon, felt a shiver. "What a strange fog," he muttered to Daphne, who was approaching. "It looks like it came out of nowhere." Suddenly, a faint, greenish light appeared in the distance, in the middle of the mist. Initially, it looked like a reflection, but as it approached, the silhouette of an old ship, with ragged sails and a corroded hull, began to materialize. A murmur of astonishment swept across the deck. The ghost ship, as everyone immediately called it, seemed to move aimlessly, slowly swaying on the waves. Its appearance was terrifying. Skull carvings adorned the bow, and a spectral glow emanated from its windows. "Is this part of the act?" a passenger asked, their voice trembling. Captain Blackwood, who was nearby, frowned. "No way. We don't have any other ship scheduled for this route. And this fog. I've never seen anything like it." Panic began to set in. Scooby and Shaggy huddled behind one of the masts, trembling. "Shaggy, are you seeing this?" Scooby whimpered. "It looks like a real ghost." The Poseidon's Delight crew tried to calm the passengers, but the ghost ship continued to approach, and now it was possible to distinguish shadowy figures on its deck, pirates with empty eyes and torn clothes, who seemed to glide rather than walk. A sharp scream erupted when one of the spectral pirates, with a cutlass raised, seemed to pass through the bow of the ghost ship and, for an instant, its cadaverous face appeared right in front of one of the closest passengers, causing them to faint. The tension was palpable. Fred tried to stay calm, but the scene was disturbing. "Velma, any pirate legends about ghost ships?" he asked. Velma, who had already pulled out her tablet, began researching frantically. "Several, Fred, several. But none that exactly match this. Most talk about the Flying Dutchman, but this vessel is different." Daphne tried to organize the passengers, asking them to return to their cabins, but the terror was contagious. The ghost ship stopped a few meters from the Poseidon's Delight, and a sound of rusty chains and distant groans echoed through the night. It was as if time had stopped, and the only thing that mattered was that haunting presence on the sea. Captain Blackwood ordered the deck lights to be turned on at full power, but the glow of the ghost ship seemed to absorb the light, maintaining its ethereal aura. Suddenly, the lights of the Poseidon's Delight began to flicker and then went out completely, plunging the ship into darkness. The silence was broken by a metallic creaking sound coming from the lower part of the ship. "It sounds like something's happening in the engine room," Fred muttered. The ghost ship, taking advantage of the blackout, began to slowly move away, disappearing into the fog as mysteriously as it had appeared, leaving behind a trail of fear and uncertainty. The luxury voyage had turned into a nightmare. What kind of sabotage was this? And how could a ship appear and disappear without a trace? The blackout on the Poseidon's Delight lasted only a few minutes, but it was enough to generate widespread chaos. The lights returned, revealing frightened passengers and a panicking crew. Captain Blackwood, his face pale, tried to restore order. Fred, with his nautical map in hand, tried to plot the ghost ship's course. "It doesn't make sense," he muttered. "It wasn't on any chart. And the way it disappeared." Velma, meanwhile, was engrossed in research. "I found something," she exclaimed, her glasses slipping down her nose. "There's a local legend about the cursed black pearl. They say it belonged to a cruel pirate named Redbeard, who betrayed his crew for treasure and was cursed to sail the seas forever, seeking revenge against those who stole from him." She paused. "But the legend speaks of a crew of undead who sabotage other ships, draining their energy and causing them to sink." Daphne, meanwhile, continued to calm the passengers, organizing them into groups and directing them to safer areas of the ship. "We need a plan, Fred," she said, visibly worried. "People are terrified. We don't know what this ghost ship will do next." Scooby and Shaggy, still trembling, went to the kitchen in search of something to calm their nerves, which for them meant any kind of food. While eating their giant sandwiches, they overheard a peculiar conversation between two crew members. They were talking about special instructions and a package that had been delivered. "Are you sure everything's working as planned?" one of them whispered. "The boss wants everything to be frighteningly real." The two friends exchanged glances, their mouths full of Scooby snacks. "Boss?" Scooby asked. "Frighteningly real?" Shaggy added. Curiosity, and fear, drove them to discreetly follow the crew members, although every creak of the ship or projected shadow made them jump. They saw the men enter a restricted area near the engine room. Fred, Velma, and Daphne, aware that the simple appearance of the ghost ship wasn't the only problem, investigated the sabotage. The blackout wasn't accidental. A crew technician reported that the generators seemed to have suffered an inexplicable overload. "It's as if something was draining the ship's energy," he said, confused. Fred began to suspect that there was more than just legends at play. Sabotage? But why? Who would do this, he pondered. Velma analyzed the navigation system data and noticed something strange. In the moments when the ghost ship appeared, the Poseidon's Delight subtly deviated from its programmed course, as if guided by an external force. "It's almost imperceptible, Fred, but the ship is being manipulated. It's not just an appearance to scare." Fred's investigation led him to the navigation control room, where he found the first mate, a man named Eddie Sharp, who seemed excessively nervous. Sharp was wiping the control panel with a cloth, but Fred noticed he was sweating profusely. "Everything all right, officer?" Fred asked. Sharp jumped. "Yes, sir. Just checking the systems." Fred noticed a small device attached to the panel, almost imperceptible. It was a type of transmitter. "What's that?" Fred questioned, pointing to the device. Sharp stammered. Just a new security system, sir." Meanwhile, Scooby and Shaggy, who had approached the engine room, saw the two crew members they were following installing small devices on various panels. They were laughing and one of them said, With this, we'll make sure the ship doesn't go anywhere. The boss will be proud. The friends hid behind some crates, terrified. What are they doing? Scooby whispered. It looks like they're deactivating things. Shaggy replied, biting his nails. Suddenly, one of the crew members tripped and dropped a small package. As he bent down to pick it up, Scooby and Shaggy saw a familiar logo on the package. It was the logo of a special effects company they had seen at a magic show years ago. It wasn't the Oceanus Cruises logo. The two exchanged glances. Special effects. Scooby thought aloud. Does that mean the ghost ship isn't real? The discovery of the devices in the engine room and the transmitter in the navigation control room began to unravel the truth. The ghost pirate ship and the sabotage were more than just legends. Someone was orchestrating everything. The question was, who and why? And why were they using special effects equipment? Scooby and Shaggy's discovery about the special effects company shocked the group. So, the ghost ship is an illusion? Daphne asked, her eyes wide. But how? It looked so real. Velma, with her analytical mind, explained. With high-powered holographic projectors, combined with dense fog, it's possible to create a convincing three-dimensional image. And the spectral crew can be made with actors using luminous clothing or even projections on thin screens. Fred, now with a new line of investigation, confronted Eddie Sharp about the transmitter device. Sharp, under pressure, admitted that the device served to divert the ship's course, but swore he didn't know why. I just followed orders, I swear. They said it was a security test. The team realized that if the ghost ship was a sham, the sabotage of the Poseidon's Delight was the real danger. Velma and Fred focused on tracking the sabotage devices found by Scooby and Shaggy. They were electromagnetic wave transmitters that caused interference in the ship's electronic systems, including the generators and the navigation system. Someone wants the ship to be vulnerable, Velma concluded. Daphne, meanwhile, continued to deal with the passengers, calming them with stories about the mysteries of the sea and assuring them that the crew was working to resolve the minor technical issues. She discovered that some passengers, curiously, seemed less frightened than others. A particular group, composed of investors and board members of Oceanus Cruises, was strangely calm, despite the incidents. Scooby and Shaggy, feeling braver now that the threat seemed less ghostly and more human, decided to investigate the crew members they had seen in the engine room. They followed them to one of the cargo holds, a dark place full of boxes. There, they overheard the crew members talking about a treasure. "Where's the map?" one of them asked. "Captain Blackwood must have it. He's always been obsessed with this legendary treasure." The mention of Captain Blackwood as the boss and the search for a treasure gave a new twist to the mystery. Fred, Velma, and Daphne gathered, connecting the dots. If the ghost ship is a sham, and the sabotage is real, then someone is using fear to cover up something bigger, Fred pondered. And Captain Blackwood seems to be the main suspect. Velma remembered the legend of the cursed Black Pearl and the pirate Redbeard. The legend says Redbeard hid an invaluable treasure before he was cursed. And that he betrayed his crew. What if this legend is the key to understanding the motive? They decided to investigate Captain Blackwood. They started with his cabin, hoping to find something that would link him to the incidents. The cabin was luxurious, filled with old maps, compasses, and other nautical objects. On one of the shelves, Velma found a dusty book about pirate legends, and one of the pages, about Redbeard, was marked. Next to the book, there was a small locked safe. While trying to open the safe, the ship swayed violently, and the lights flickered again. This time, the ghost ship didn't appear, but a loud, continuous sound of alarm sirens filled the air. "It's an evacuation alert!" Daphne shouted. Someone activated the system manually. Chaos set in again, and passengers began to run through the corridors, looking for emergency exits. The team realized that the alarm was another distraction, a way to empty the ship and allow the real plan to be executed. The safe in Captain Blackwood's cabin became increasingly important. They needed to open it before the ship was completely evacuated and those responsible for the mystery could escape with whatever they were looking for. And what was the connection between a legendary treasure and the operation of the ghost pirate ship? With the evacuation alarm blaring, Captain Blackwood's cabin became the epicenter of the investigation for Mystery Incorporated. Fred tried to force the safe, but it was too robust. Velma examined the lock, looking for some hidden mechanism. "It's a combination safe," she observed, "and the number must have some relation to the captain's pirate theme." Meanwhile, Scooby and Shaggy, still terrified by the alarm, stumbled upon a loose panel in the hallway, near the captain's cabin. Curious, and always hoping to find food, they peered behind the panel. To their surprise, there was a tangle of wires and a small monitor that showed the ship's layout and some notes. One of the notes read, "Treasure, Main Deck, Cargo Section B, Compartment 3. The information was crucial. The treasure isn't hidden on the ghost ship, it's on the Poseidon's Delight. Daphne exclaimed, realizing the connection. Fred immediately connected the dots. The ghost ship and the sabotage were a distraction to keep us away from the real objective, the treasure. Returning to the safe, Velma noticed a pattern in Captain Blackwood's nautical objects. There was a book about the greatest pirates in history and the birth year of each. She tested a sequence of numbers based on the birth years of some of the most famous pirates, including Redbeard. After a few attempts, the safe finally opened with a soft click. Inside, there was no gold or jewels, but rather old maps, logbooks, and, most surprisingly, a contract signed by Oceanus Cruises for a submarine treasure recovery expedition, specifically the Redbeard's treasure, which was supposedly sunk in that area of the sea. The contract had a strict confidentiality clause, and the expedition date coincided with that of the inaugural cruise. Fred, Velma, and Daphne exchanged glances, the truth beginning to fall into place. Captain Blackwood was not just the ship's commander, but the leader of an operation to recover a treasure, using the pirate-themed cruise as a facade and the ghost ship as a distraction to ward off curious onlookers and terrify passengers. The logbook revealed even more. Blackwood was a descendant of one of Redbeard's crew members and believed the treasure was his by right of inheritance. He had infiltrated Oceanus Cruises to gain access to the ship's resources and route, which passed exactly over the site of the Black Pearl shipwreck. The sabotage devices and the transmitter in the navigation control room were used to ensure that the Poseidon's Delight stayed in the exact position over the treasure, and that the evacuation alarm would empty the ship so they could operate without witnesses. The team now had the complete plan. Blackwood, with the help of some crew members who were his accomplices, the same one Scooby and Shaggy saw, would use the night to lower a prepositioned search mini-submarine from the ship, and recover the treasure. The ghost ship was just an illusion to create chaos and an excuse for the ship to stop at the right location, disguising the recovery operation. But time was running out. The evacuation alarm continued to blare, and almost all the passengers were in the lifeboats. Fred, Velma, and Daphne needed to act quickly to stop Blackwood before he could get his treasure. They rushed to the main deck, following Scooby and Shaggy's directions about the cargo compartment. Arriving there, they found Blackwood's accomplices already opening the cargo hatches and preparing a crane to lower the submarine. Captain Blackwood himself, without his pirate costume but in a diving suit, was giving orders. He smiled maliciously upon seeing Mystery Inc. Well, meddling detectives. You've arrived just in time to see a pirate claim what's his. He pointed to a figure at the ship's bow, who had just activated the holographic projector for the ghost ship again, to maintain the chaos and prevent anyone from coming to the deck. The ghost pirate ship emerged once more in the mists, even more vivid and terrifying, as Blackwood and his accomplices rushed to lower the submarine. Mystery Incorporated was surrounded. How would they stop the treasure recovery and unmask the real villains amidst all this chaos? And what was in that submarine that would allow the treasure to be recovered in such adverse conditions? The ghost pirate ship floated sinisterly beside the Poseidon's Delight, a perfect holographic projection that created the desired chaos. Fred, Velma, and Daphne were in a race against time, with Scooby and Shaggy sneaking behind crates, still terrified, but determined to help. Fred acted first. As Blackwood's accomplices hurried to maneuver the crane, he noticed the holographic projector's control panel. "Velma, I need you to deactivate that thing. If the passengers see that the ghost is a fake, they'll come back to the ship and create even more confusion for Blackwood." Velma rushed to the panel, analyzing the wires and buttons with her usual speed. Daphne tried to distract Blackwood's accomplices. "Where's Captain Blackwood? Shouldn't he be organizing the evacuation?" she asked, her voice convincing. The accomplices, caught off guard, stammered. Blackwood, who was near the submarine, turned, annoyed. "Don't interfere. This is a family matter." While Velma worked on the projector, Scooby and Shaggy spotted the accomplice who had dropped the special effects box. They remembered him talking about a Plan B and a master key. With a burst of bravery, and the smell of an imaginary ham sandwich, they decided to follow the man. He was trying to get into a small lifeboat, presumably to escape. At the holographic panel, Velma identified the main circuit and, with a quick cut to a specific wire, the ghost pirate ship began to flicker, distorting into a shapeless light show and then disappearing completely. A murmur of confusion, and then indignation, echoed among the passengers in the lifeboats that were still nearby. "It was a fake," someone shouted. Attention turned to the Poseidon's Delight. With the ghost deactivated, Fred confronted Blackwood. "You used fear to cover up a robbery. That treasure isn't yours." Blackwood laughed. "Redbeard's treasure is mine by right of blood. My ancestor was betrayed, and I'm just correcting a historical wrong." The struggle on the main deck intensified. Fred and Daphne tried to prevent the submarine from being lowered, fighting against Blackwood's accomplices. Velma, seeing that the combat was becoming physical, ran to help. Meanwhile, Scooby and Shaggy, following the fleeing accomplice, saw him unlock a small box in the lifeboat. Inside, there was a navigation map and, to their surprise, a small hidden compartment containing a remote control device. "The master key." Scooby whimpered. The accomplice, startled by the two's presence, tried to run, but Scooby, in a clumsy move, knocked him down. The remote control fell from the accomplice's hands. Shaggy picked up the device. There were several buttons, but one stood out, with a drawing of a boat and a lightning bolt. Curious, he pressed it. On the Poseidon's Delight, the submarine that was being lowered by Blackwood and his men suddenly stopped, and part of its structure opened, revealing a bomb. It was an implosion bomb, intended to sink the Poseidon's Delight, after the treasure was recovered, to eliminate any evidence of the robbery. Captain Blackwood, shocked, looked at the submarine. "No. That's not part of the plan." Suddenly, a portable radio, which was in the possession of one of the accomplices, began to crackle. A familiar, cold voice echoed, "Captain Blackwood, it seems your little friends have discovered the secret. And to leave no trace, the Poseidon's Delight will have to go down. Goodbye, Captain." It was the voice of Edward "Eddie" Sharp, the first mate. The true mastermind behind everything. He wasn't just an accomplice, but the real mastermind, using Blackwood and the treasure legend as a facade. Sharp, who had activated the bomb remotely with the control Shaggy had unwittingly triggered, was on the lower deck, planning his own escape, while the ship sank. He wanted the treasure for himself and didn't want to leave witnesses, not even his own partners in crime. The shock was widespread. Fred, Velma, and Daphne, though surprised, knew they had to act quickly. Time was running out. The submarine, with the bomb exposed, was about to fall back onto the deck and explode. They had to deactivate the bomb and catch Sharp. But how, with a bomb about to explode and the true villain at large on the ship? The scene was one of complete despair. The bomb on the submarine was visible, and the digital timer flashed red, showing only a few minutes remaining. Edward Sharp, the true mastermind, had disappeared to the lower deck, likely heading for one of the remaining lifeboats. Fred took charge. Velma, focus on the bomb. Try to deactivate it. Daphne, help hold Blackwood's accomplices. Scooby, Shaggy, we need to find Sharp. Velma, with trembling hands, analyzed the bomb. It's an implosion bomb. It uses water pressure to amplify the explosion. If we deactivate it, the ship might be saved, but there will still be an impact. She noticed a series of colored wires and a small diagram glued to the side of the bomb. Looks like the deactivation sequence is here. I need silence. While Velma worked feverishly, Fred and Daphne fought against Blackwood's accomplices. Shocked by Sharp's betrayal and the bomb, were disoriented and unsure what to do. Captain Blackwood, in turn, was in a state of shock, realizing he had been a mere pawn in Sharp's game. He betrayed me, he shouted, in a mix of anger and despair. Scooby and Shaggy, propelled by adrenaline and the desire to save the ship, followed Sharp's tracks. They found him trying to board the last lifeboat. Sharp had a suitcase full of money and documents, ready to flee. I told you not to meddle, you meddling kids, he growled, trying to push them away. Scooby, with an unexpected jump, grabbed Sharp's suitcase, and Shaggy, in a reflex action, pulled a rope from one of the emergency equipment, causing the villain to trip and fall, entangling him in a mess of ropes. Sharp, immobilized, cursed. Back on the main deck, Velma succeeded. With a final click on a green wire, the red light on the bomb's timer went out. A collective sigh of relief was heard. I did it. The bomb is deactivated, she exclaimed, exhausted. The news spread quickly among the passengers in the lifeboats. Fear began to give way to anger and indignation. The ghost pirate ship was a fake, the sabotage a plan, and the bomb was the icing on the cake. Mystery Incorporated had saved the day. With Sharp captured, Captain Blackwood and his accomplices were detained. Blackwood, remorseful, explained everything to the summoned Coast Guard. He confessed that Sharp had manipulated him, exploiting his obsession with Redbeard's treasure. Sharp, in turn, not only wanted the treasure but also planned to sink the Poseidon's Delight to collect the ship's exorbitant insurance, as well as eliminate any trace of the treasure recovery operation. The bomb was the guarantee that there would be no witnesses. The Mystery Incorporated team explained how the ghost pirate ship was a holographic projection, the sabotage devices, and the transmitter in the navigation control room. The spectral crew were Sharp's accomplices wearing luminous clothing, and the spooky sounds were played through hidden speakers. Redbeard's treasure was, in fact, found. It did not consist of gold and jewels, but invaluable historical documents revealing secret trade routes and geographical discoveries that revolutionized the knowledge of the time. Oceanus Cruises decided to donate the treasure to a maritime museum, making it accessible to the public. The Poseidon's Delight was repaired, and Oceanus Cruises committed to refunding passengers and organizing a new trip, this time without ghosts or bombs. The curse of the ghost pirate ship was unraveled, revealing that the true curse was not of a cursed pirate, but rather of human greed. The Poseidon's Delight set sail again, now as a symbol of triumph rather than mystery. The Mystery Incorporated gang headed home, leaving behind the unraveled legend of the ghost pirate ship. The treasure, once shrouded in centuries of myths, revealed its historical value, proving that not all riches gleam with gold. The true adventure, as always, wasn't in finding what one sought, but in unmasking the truth behind the illusion, reminding everyone that, however dark a legend may seem, the human mind is always the most intriguing of all piracies.